Hello, my name is Dr. Russell Barkley, and I'm a clinical professor of psychiatry at the Virginia Commonwealth University Medical Center here in Richmond, Virginia. Today I want to speak with you about ways that parents and teachers can improve their collaboration in working to help children with ADHD, do better in school. This is a subject that is not often covered in many courses on ADHD, but my sponsors and I felt that this would be very helpful for both parents and teachers to understand what goes into a good collaboration in working for students with ADHD. The first thing that we recommend is that both teachers and parents stop viewing ADHD as just some type of behavior problem that arises from some social circumstances, particularly bad parenting or poor diet or just willful disobedience by the child. And in some cases, parents may blame the schools for the problem that the student has, or specifically blame a particular teacher. None of these are known to be causes of ADHD. As my other lectures have covered, ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means that it has very strong roots or origins in biology and specifically in neurological development and genetics. So ADHD does not arise from these environmental factors and is not just simply some ordinary behavior problem that improving parenting or teaching is going to get rid of. That's a crucial idea that parents and teachers need to appreciate. It's not their fault, either one. This just happens to be the way this child was born, and we simply have to deal with that. So it's important then that both parents and teachers find resources where they can learn more about the nature of ADHD, what causes it, what are the risks to ADHD children if they do not get diagnosed and treated properly, and of course, what are the evidence-based treatments that are available for working with ADHD to improve their life. Both parents and teachers need to understand that there is no cure for ADHD, but that does not mean we do not have a variety of useful treatments in order to cope with it, reduce the symptoms, and most importantly, to prevent the secondary harms that can occur to children from having unmanaged ADHD. In that sense, as I've explained in other lectures, ADHD is very much like diabetes. It is not curable, and yet we don't question treating diabetes because we know that by controlling the diabetes, we can prevent children from having other problems that come from unmanaged diabetes. That alone is a worthwhile goal. Indeed, it could save the life of the child. Both ADHD and diabetes are actually life-threatening disorders when they are not managed properly. Another thing that families and teachers can do is to cease engaging in moral judgments about the children with ADHD, as well as about each other as causing the ADHD. Many times, parents and teachers judge children with this problem as just willfully disobedient, as bad seeds, as we say in English. And the child is viewed as having the ability to change if they wanted to, but they just don't want to. They choose to be this way, and that is not true. It also comes to view the child with ADHD as somehow a lesser person, as not worthy of our respect or compassion or empathy or our treatment. So it's important that we view ADHD through the lens of science as a neurodevelopmental disorder and not as just some moral failing of character that the child could get over. Teachers need to stop blaming parents in this judgmental way as having created the child's ADHD, which now the child and teacher have to deal with at school. Parenting is not a cause of ADHD, as I've said earlier. And parents need also to stop blaming teachers for causing the problems that the child has. Many times parents think that if there's a problem at school, it's the result of bad schools or improper teaching. And that is simply not true when it comes to ADHD. So we need to show more respect for each other, both for the students, for the teachers, and the parents, and come to understand that all are trying their best to cope with a child that has a developmental disorder of self-regulation, of self-control, and therefore is going to demand more attention, time, and assistance in helping them to succeed in school. Teachers can also adopt a more compassionate and empathic view or stance toward parents who are trying to raise an incredibly difficult child. Parenting a child with ADHD is very stressful, can sometimes even lead to parental depression and even parents divorcing. It is hard work raising such a child, as difficult, if not more so, than raising a child with autism spectrum disorder. So show not just respect, but some compassion for the plight of these families who have been given a difficult child to raise, and how difficult that must be to do. Likewise, I think that parents should adopt a very helpful, reasonable, and collaborative view or stance toward working with teachers at school to help their child do better, inquiring about the nature of school problems and asking what the school thinks the parent could also be doing that might help to improve the situation. And parents, too, need to show empathy and compassion for the plight of teachers who have to deal with this very difficult child in their classroom, while also dealing with multiple other students each day and the problems that those students may pose as well. It's not just about your child. It's about all the children in the classroom. And yes, while children with ADHD deserve extra assistance and accommodations at school to help them succeed, we also need to understand that there's a limited amount of time that teachers have available to do this while handling all of their other responsibilities for other students that day. In other words, I think both people should be more open to listening to what each other has to say, to informing each other about what is going on in the particular context or situation that they supervise with regard to that child and that child's adjustment. When feasible, try to assist each other in various ways to improve the child's school success. And that includes, if necessary, both parents and teachers accepting outside help from other professionals who may be expert in dealing with ADHD children, such as child psychiatrists and psychologists, pediatricians, educational tutors, and others that might be brought into the circumstances to help this child with ADHD. So be open to collaborating not just with each other, but also with outside professionals as well. The bottom line is the need to show respect for each other, to be open to listening to each other, and to remember that both of you share the same goal. You want what's best for this child within that educational system. If you keep these things in mind, you should find that they go a long way toward improving your relationship with each other and with the student, and in helping to meet your goal of assisting this child to succeed at school. One way that schools and parents can help each other improving the situation in school for children with ADHD is to develop and distribute information about ADHD and resources within and outside the school. Parents and teachers, or both, can do this by developing a list of paper handouts that show various books and videos that specialize in conveying information about ADHD and other disorders that ADHD children may have, so that families and teachers can have a list of resources readily at their disposal to help educate them about ADHD and about the other learning, developmental, and psychiatric disorders that can coexist with ADHD in many cases. So just creating lists that can be shared with other families, with other teachers, of resources for ADHD children, such as books and videos, can be extraordinarily helpful at improving the lives of ADHD children in that school system. You can also place these lists on the school's website under a page for parent resources, so that families who have ADHD children, but also families that have other children with learning and developmental problems, can quickly locate additional resources that they can rely on to educate themselves about ADHD and its management. You can also create a separate section in the school library for parent books, just as we see in bookstores or in online booksellers. There are whole sections on parenting, and many of them have special subsections on specific developmental disabilities like ADHD or autism spectrum disorder or others. And your school could do much the same thing by creating a library section for books that can be checked out by parents to help stay or get educated about ADHD in their child. You can also invite regional or national experts to donate their books to help advise the school on the content of these lists and libraries, and maybe even to come and teach at the school periodically to help maintain the level of information that schools have about the latest facts on ADHD and scientific discoveries. You can also go out and invite various charitable foundations in your country to donate funds to help purchase these books and videos, and hire, if necessary, these various experts to come to the school to help maintain the level of information about ADHD and learn what's new in managing ADHD in schools. You can even approach individual wealthy donors, philanthropists as we call them in English, in order to also make financial donations to schools in order to purchase these resources. Schools or parents can also approach publishers who publish these books on ADHD and ask them if they would donate free copies of these books to that particular school. Many will get a tax deduction for that in some countries, but no matter, you can appeal to these publishers and their goodwill in order to donate books to the school. And then parents can check these books out of the library, as can teachers, in order to learn more about the disorder. Publishers could also offer discounts to parents or teachers from that school district who wish to make purchases of these books so they can own their own copies of the books and videos and other resources. So there are various ways of developing additional resources at school by just tapping into these various options within the community or your country. And then, if it's possible, create links on the school website over to other reputable websites that provide information about that disorder. In the United States, we have the foundation known as CHADD, Children and Adults with ADHD, that provides a wealth of information online for families and teachers. They also hold annual conferences on ADHD where professionals and parents can learn the latest facts and treatments related to ADHD. They sponsor regional chapters where parents can meet monthly to commiserate with each other, as well as to listen to guest speakers and learn more about their child with ADHD. In Canada, there is the website for CADRA, which is the Canadian ADHD Alliance and resources availability in Canada. There is also a link to the World Federation for ADHD, which is a collaboration among various parent associations in many different countries in order to create an internationally available website for information on ADHD and to assist each other in improving the services that they provide to families within their country. Perhaps there are such websites and organizations in your country too. Besides developing these lists, libraries of resources, the school and the parents can look around the region and the country and try to identify local and national experts on ADHD that can help evaluate and treat children with ADHD who might be referred to them. The school or the parents group can compile a list of these area professionals and clinics that specialize in ADHD and share these with families who are just learning that their child might have this disorder. You can also keep a list of educational tutors who are willing to work with ADHD children outside of school in order to help keep them progressing well through the educational materials that they have to learn at their particular grade. The school or parents at the school could also help to develop a parent support association focused on ADHD that meets at that school monthly so that parents can gather together to learn that they are not alone, to listen to guest speakers, and to simply acquire more information from the chapter president and others on how to understand and manage ADHD. You can also contact the area medical schools and their psychiatry departments to see if they have clinics that specialize in evaluating and managing children with ADHD, and put those on the list too. And then don't forget to check university psychology departments. If they have graduate training programs that offer clinical training in clinical psychology, they may also have expertise or even a specialty clinic in helping children with ADHD. Schools can put all of this together in a list of resources to share with families and with teachers on what is available to help a particular child. Now, in addition to that, the schools can also look inside themselves. within the school to identify what resources they might have that teachers and parents could call upon to help a child with ADHD. One is to look for teachers that have a great deal of teaching experience in working with children with special needs, especially those that have ADHD. I call these master teachers, who not only have the teaching experience, but have gotten extra training in ADHD and in managing it within the schools. These teachers could become a resource to other teachers in consulting with them upon request about a child in their class that seems to have ADHD or is in need of help. The master teacher can spend just a short period of time consulting with the other teacher on what he or she has learned works best for that type of problem. I also mentioned in my other lectures that schools can develop a liaison who not only is a master teacher that consults to other teachers less experienced with ADHD, but who also consults with parents. If a parent has a child with ADHD at that school, this liaison is the person they're told to call and to ask about problems they've heard their child might be having, about getting more information about those difficulties, and calling the parents back to let them know what they have learned, so that the liaison mediates the relationships between the parents and the teachers at school, so that the parents don't have to bother all of these different teachers to gather the information they need to know more about any problem that might be happening at school. It's kind of like having a patient representative at an area hospital. The representative is someone that a patient at the hospital can call if they feel there is a problem with their care at the hospital. And it's the job of the representative to investigate that, get more information, and get back to the patient with what they've learned and what they propose to do with the problem. And the same thing could be done at school with these school ADHD liaisons. In high school, see if there are teachers, psychologists, social workers, or other staff members who might be willing to donate a little extra time each day to serve as a coach, to supervise students with ADHD, and to do so 3 times a day for just a few minutes, where that student goes to them and that coach reviews what their homework is, whether they have the books for the next classes, how they're behaving in their classes. They can even institute a daily behavior report card that I've talked about in other lectures and will show you in just a moment, to monitor that student's behavior as they go about their school day, taking classes with other teachers. By meeting several times a day with the student to help organize them, check on their behavior, and give them some motivational language, or pep talk we call them, you can help boost the success of a high school student with ADHD in that school. Because what you do is increase the accountability of that student to other people. And we know that increased accountability improves students with ADHD in schools. Schools can also work collaboratively with parents to develop additional services that they may not currently offer. One, as I've already suggested, is to start a monthly parent support group for families with children with ADHD in that school. This support group meets monthly so that parents, as I've said, get to know that they're not alone, that there are other families struggling to raise these difficult children. These groups can also collect books and videos to lend to their members. They can also invite mental health professionals in the region to be on their advisory board, to come to these monthly meetings and give brief lectures on what is new in ADHD or about particular topics related to ADHD, such as the latest on medications and how they should be used. So parent support associations at schools are a way of adding to the resources schools already have to help children with ADHD. You can also try to find area professionals such as psychologists and social workers who have special expertise in teaching parents child behavior management skills that parents can learn to use with their child with ADHD and improve that child's behavior at home. These professionals might also be able to consult with teachers about classroom behavior management methods that have proven useful for children with ADHD. But here I focus on the use of professionals to run parent training groups on a weekly basis at the school for, say, 6 to maybe 10 weeks in order to take parents through these well-known behavior management strategies that have been found to be useful for children with ADHD and other behavior problems. Here you see some of the many behavioral parent training programs that have shown to be helpful in having families cope with their child with ADHD and create less conflict and better relationships at home. My program on Defiant Children, the program by Charles Cunningham out of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, known as the COPE program for Community Opportunities for Parent Education. The Triple P program developed by Sanders and Dads, known as Positive Parenting Practices, is also quite good. And then for middle school and high school students, Joshua Langberg here at my university in the psychology department has published a program for teaching parents and teens better organizational and planning skills to help with homework and schoolwork completion. There are many such programs. See if there are experts in your area that might be willing to run these kinds of training groups at the school on a weekly basis to offer additional services to families with ADHD children. Now, principals and administrators should plan to meet with parents of an ADHD child well in advance of the next school year in order to help select the best teachers to work with that student in the upcoming year. Here in the United States, we would suggest that this meeting be held in April or May prior to the conclusion of that school year in order to set in place exactly who this child is going to be moving on to work with at the next grade level. Don't wait for this to be done by computers or other staff members on a random basis over the summer, and then you find out just before the new school year begins who your child's teachers are going to be. So be proactive as a school administrator or as a parent and schedule these meetings well in advance so that we can work on and choose the best teachers for that child for the next school year. And then during the school year, parents and teachers should have frequent conferences with each other about the child's progress through the year. Don't wait until the traditional review periods. Here in my country, that is the 9-week grading period. That's too late. The child is already failing before the parents know of these difficulties and before the school is choosing to do something about them. So a meeting every 4 to 6 weeks between parents and teachers might be more useful in detecting these problems early and doing something about them before they become bigger issues and before the child is really failing that year in school. These meetings can be held in person, but they can also be held virtually using many of the platforms like Zoom and GoToMeeting and others that allow people to meet and collaborate online, making it more convenient for them to do so as well. Schools might consider adopting a program that has proven useful here in the United States called the Challenging Horizons program. You can contact Dr. Steve Evans at this email address in order to get the manual for how to do this program. But essentially, it's for middle school and high school students with ADHD. And these students meet together as a group twice a week. And during these group meetings, they receive extra tutoring in any subjects in which they might be struggling. They may receive extra counseling or training in sports skills or in social skills, how to behave better during recess, during lunchtime, on the school bus, and so forth. These counselors who conduct the program can also give a couple of sessions of training to the child's teachers in order to help improve their knowledge of behavior management practices. And they can also reach out to the parents of these teenagers and meet with them a few times to counsel them on good behavior management practices as well. So this is a very valuable program because it eliminates the need for teenagers and parents to leave the school, to go to mental health clinics, and to try to get these extra services. We know that this creates obstacles to parents accessing or being willing to access these services. But we also know that teenagers do not like the stigma of going to a mental health clinic to receive services. By getting the same kinds of services at the school, after school, several times a week, as if it were a club or a sport or some other school organization, it can help remove a lot of the stigma of getting extra help without going to a psychiatric clinic. Most importantly, parents and teachers need to communicate as often as necessary about this child, what the issues are, what they propose to do about it. There can never be too much communication. So parents and teachers can meet to decide on what methods they would like to use to have either weekly or even daily communication, sharing of information with each other about this child. There could be a paper journal in which parents and teachers simply write short notes each day, and that journal goes back and forth from home to school and back again in the child's book bag. And parents and teachers know to look there for the journal and to write in it any special comments or notes about the day that it would be useful for the other person to know. I've talked before about creating a daily behavior report card, an example of which you see here, that the student takes to each teacher at school. And each teacher, using one of the numbered columns, rates the child, that is, evaluates them, using a numbering system like a grading system, such as the numbers 1 to 5, to indicate how well the student behaved in their class that day with regard to the issues, the goals that you see listed along the side of the card. How did they do in participating in class, for instance, in following class rules? And the teacher simply places a number that indicates how well or poorly they did. And then the card goes to the next teacher and the next teacher. This system does a number of important things that are valuable for ADHD students. First, it provides immediate feedback to the student in that class as to how well or poorly they're doing. And if there are problems, there can be a brief discussion with the teacher about what the student needs to do to improve. Second, it improves communication between the parent and teacher so that the parent knows how the school day has progressed. if the student has done well or poorly. And the numbering system allows us to convert this card to a point system, a token system at home, where the student earns points that they can then cash in to earn extra privileges at home for how well they have behaved. So it becomes a reward program that can further improve that child's behavior through extra motivation to earn those points to get those privileges. You can also write homework assignments on the back of the card so that families know exactly what needs to be done. You can listen to my lectures on managing ADHD at school to learn more about this card system, or simply read my books, Defiant Children, which is for professionals, or Your Defiant Child, which is for parents. You don't need to use a more complex card like this. Sometimes just a simple note that goes back and forth between the parents and teachers, summarizing the day briefly, can be helpful. This can also be done through emails on a daily or weekly basis between the teacher and the parents, or vice versa, or through text messaging and phone calls, although we often find that those are much more disruptive of what the other person is doing. So only use them if there is an urgent issue that needs immediate response from the other person. Otherwise, email should be sufficient. Teachers can post homework assignments for that day or for the entire week on their page on the school's websites so that the student and the parents can access that to know exactly what the student has to do that evening or that weekend in order to prepare for the next school session. Be sure when you choose to talk to each other that you look for the best times to do so. Don't just catch each other when it happens to be convenient, say at a school function like a PTA meeting or a sporting event where parents see a teacher and go over and want to talk to them about the student. That's not an appropriate time to have that kind of discussion. The same is true if teachers, when they're out in the community, happen to see parents out shopping or at parks or other recreational events and want to go over and talk to them about a student. Again, that's not an appropriate time or situation to do so. Instead, set up a formal meeting at the school where the sole purpose of that is to discuss the student's progress. And each participant knows what they're doing there and can plan for what to do when they get there. Then open the meeting by acknowledging that the other person brings a special expertise and perspective to the meeting. Teachers know best what's going on in school. Parents don't. But parents know best what's going on at home and about their child's history, and bring that expertise to the meeting as well. And then appreciate each other respectfully for the knowledge that each possesses. It really helps to express gratitude toward each other for what each is trying to do to benefit this student, and to do so frequently. Gratitude is the social grease that contributes not just to civil relationships between people, but closer, more friendlier and respectful relationships as well. You can also express this gratitude in another way that I find very helpful, and that is to have students write letters to their parents about what they appreciate their parents do to help them do well at school. And parents, you could have your student occasionally write a letter to their teachers, explaining what they appreciate that the teacher does to help them try and succeed at school. These letters teach the student about the value of gratitude in developing better relationships with other people, and also helps to show the other partner, the teacher or the parent, that students appreciate them as well. Finally, if there are truly difficult problems occurring at school, then schedule one of the meetings I've talked about and meet as a team to discuss it collaboratively, not as adversaries, but as people who wish to join together to try to solve this problem. We can do that by making sure that we don't take the problem personally, and instead write the problem down at the meeting on a sheet of paper, define it as specifically as possible, and then follow these key steps to problem solving. Each person at the meeting should write down on a blank line sheet of paper, right, the ideas that everyone comes up with that might help to solve this problem. And then work collaboratively to generate as many possible ideas as you can think of. No holds barred, no restrictions or limitations. Think of even the wildest or craziest ideas that might, just might, help in this situation, and list those. You don't want to engage in criticism here, because criticism eliminates or restricts creativity. This is the creative part of problem solving. So just think as wildly as you can about a variety of options that might help here. Now, after you have that list, the parents and teachers can go through each individual option and discuss how they feel about them. Do they think that would succeed? And then circle the ones where there is some agreement. At the end, you can identify one or more of these options that has the greatest agreement and decide to institute that as the solution to the problem, understanding that it's simply an experiment for about a week to see if this will help that child. If not, we can meet again to review progress and help to strategize or come up with different strategies in another week or two. This is collaborative problem solving, and it can work very well at coming up with good ideas to help a child at school. There are other things that parents can do, teachers as well, but this is specifically for parents, to improve their relationships with schools and thereby improve their child's success at school. First of all, visit the school often. Don't be a stranger. Make sure that the school knows who you are. Stop in once in a while, not just for formal school conferences, but as a volunteer, or to bring special snacks or treats to school to share with that child's class, or to show up and read at story time particular favorite stories that you can read to your child's class. Or maybe come in and volunteer in that class to talk about the kind of work that you do to educate students about the various occupations that adults can fulfill in their work lives, to give them an idea of the variety of vocations that the children might think about as they grow up and have to choose their own occupation. Parents can also volunteer more regularly to help teachers in the classroom if they have the time. They could even just become the class representative in the library on the day that the class visits, in order to help the librarian with the needs of these students in getting books off the shelves, finding particular resources, and doing whatever the librarian feels would assist them in helping that class on library day at that school. Parents can also volunteer to share information from the school to other parents within the school district, perhaps having to do with special meetings, with conferences, with experts coming to lecture at the school, and disseminate that knowledge in their social networks out through other parents who are members of that school district. Parents should also use the opportunity to visit the school to share information, important information about anything happening at home about that student that would be valuable for the teacher to know. And they can do this, again, through the journals, the emails, the text messages if necessary, or just stopping by the school to give that information. Parents can also be a liaison between the other professionals outside of school working with that student, such as a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist, or maybe an educational tutor, and the teachers at the school, so that the parent has the information from the professionals that needs to be given to the teachers so that teachers know what these professionals are doing to help improve the treatment plan for that ADHD student. This is especially important where a physician may be starting a child on an ADHD medication or may be adjusting the dose of the medication. And we need for the teachers to be aware of that so that they can pay special attention to any new benefits or new side effects that they see occurring with that child when that change takes place. To summarize, let me list what are considered to be 12 steps for improving better parent-teacher collaboration and relationships that can contribute to ADHD students' success in school. Number 1, view yourself as a member of a team, as a parent, as a teacher, as an administrator, or other staff member at school. All of us work together to form a team working for the best interest of that child. That's our goal, and if we keep that in mind, we will work together toward that goal and not blame each other or accuse each other or develop as adversaries. Start the school year off right with an early, positive, introductory meeting with each other to get to know each other better. At that meeting, share email addresses, cell phone numbers, and talk about how you will communicate with each other frequently, but so that it doesn't disrupt the other person's day. And I've given you a variety of means for that communication. Strive to keep your communication with your collaborator, the parent or the teacher, as positive as possible. Even though difficulties may be occurring, do not take those problems personally. You're not causing the problems at school as a parent or a teacher. Understanding that allows you to know that this is a special child with special developmental problems, and that each person has to struggle with how best to deal with them and to help them become successful. And we do that through positive communication, done at each other's convenience, and, as I said, acting as collaborators. When new problems emerge, try to address them quickly. We say nip the problem in the bud as if it were a flower, so that you can deal with it before it becomes much, much worse and leads to greater problems and adverse consequences for that student. Each person at these meetings can share what works in their situation with the other person. What works at home for this particular student? What works at school that parents might like to know to try at home? Be sure when you have these meetings to come prepared for them. Don't show up late. Be on time. Be respectful. And understand what the purpose of the meeting is. Come with your questions or with your suggestions about what may need to be done. And parents, show up often. And as I've said, volunteer at the school and get more involved so that the school and the teachers come to know you and to respect you as a parent interested in helping students at that school. If you come into conflict with a teacher, try to resolve it quickly. Admit that there's a disagreement. Ask the teacher, what might the next step be that we could do to resolve this disagreement? Would it help to bring in another teacher, a school administrator, a district supervisor, in order to help discuss the issue further and get another perspective on the conflict and how to solve it? Again, just because there's a conflict, a difference of opinion, doesn't mean that you can't remain respectful, helpful, and collaborative. but it may mean that a third party might be needed to help mediate or negotiate the conflict. Parents, be sure to take the advice of teachers who are experts in educating children. And teachers, as well, should show mutual respect, that parents are more expert about their child, that child's individual strengths, needs, and weaknesses, than that teacher will ever be. Together, the two can collaborate on an effective program for that student and collaborate as experts in their own domain. Finally, again, I repeat, gratitude is a beautiful thing in maintaining respectful relationships and collaborative relationships among people. Show your appreciation for each other often, and that will go a long way toward improving the environment at school and the likelihood that ADHD students can succeed there. I hope you've learned something from this video lecture on ways to improve parent-teacher, home and school collaborations and relationships to the benefit of students with ADHD in that school. Thank you.